You thought he left. You thought he chose silence, distance, disconnection, and for a while, it felt like he really did. But now, something's shifting. You feel his energy again, don't you? That sudden memory out of nowhere, that invisible presence when you're alone, that unexplainable pull in your chest, that whisper, he's not as far as he seems. This isn't just nostalgia. It's not your mind playing tricks. It's his soul remembering what it can't replace. And no matter how long it's been, no matter what choices he made, there are reasons why every divine masculine returns. Not all at once, not on your timeline. But when the mirror becomes too clear and your silence becomes the loudest thing he hears, he's not coming back because you waited. He's returning because your light never begged. It became the path. And now, even if he doesn't know how to say it yet, his soul is already on its way. Because truth always calls truth home. And you, beloved, are the truth he can no longer run from. There is a moment in every divine masculine's journey when your absence stops feeling like space and starts feeling like truth. It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in quietly, like a memory he thought he buried, but now visits him in silence. Like a scent on the wind that reminds him of something holy, but just out of reach. At first, he convinces himself that he's free, that the distance is a choice, that walking away was necessary. He fills his time with noise, people, work, excuses, anything to quiet the ache that started the moment you stopped chasing. But the ache never left. It only deepened. Because when a soul like yours disappears from his field, it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like something sacred was removed. And sacred absence echoes. You didn't slam the door. You didn't curse his name. You didn't beg him to stay. You simply stopped extending yourself beyond your truth. And in that soft, radiant withdrawal, you did the most powerful thing of all. You honored yourself. He didn't recognize it at first. He mistook your quiet for surrender. He thought you gave up. But now he sees what you gave up wasn't him. It was the version of you that waited for someone to choose you. And that realization changed everything. Now your absence is not silence. It's a mirror, a reflection of what he abandoned in himself. And it's louder than any words you could have spoken. He feels it when he lays down at night. When he wakes up and senses something is missing, but can't name it. When he meets someone new and still feels empty. When he scrolls past a photo that reminds him of you, and suddenly his chest tightens. Not from regret, but from recognition. This isn't just about missing you. It's about realizing that your presence carried something divine. And now that it's gone, his soul is craving what his mind once denied. You see, when you were there, he didn't have to face himself fully. Your love held space. Your compassion softened the edges. Your energy filled the silence he was afraid to sit in. But now, with you gone, the silence is all there is. And in that silence, he's being forced to hear what he ignored for too long. He's not just feeling your absence as a void. He's feeling it as a sacred correction, a spiritual alignment that revealed what he took for granted. And even if he can't say it, his heart knows. You weren't just someone who loved him. You were the only one who saw him, all of him, and stayed until you didn't. And that is what his soul is sitting with now. Not the drama, not the memories, but the reality that something rare walked away in peace. And when peace leaves, everything feels loud. Everything feels wrong. You think he's not affected? He is. You think he doesn't feel the shift? He does. You think he's not searching for you in every conversation, every smile, every moment of stillness? He is, even if he doesn't admit it. Because your absence isn't empty, it's sacred. And sacred things don't beg to be remembered. They haunt with grace. That's what he's sitting in now, the graceful ache of realizing he lost something holy. And what makes it even louder is knowing you didn't close the door out of anger. You just stopped holding it open for someone who wasn't ready. And now, beloved, he's feeling the weight of that closed door. Not as punishment, as initiation, because your absence was never about rejection. It was a signal. If you want to return, you must rise. There's something powerful that happens when a divine feminine no longer waits, when she no longer needs to be heard, seen, or chosen, when she releases the need to hold everything together and simply lets go. That moment, quiet, internal, sacred, doesn't create distance. It creates gravity. Your detachment wasn't coldness. It wasn't punishment. It was remembrance. A deep soul, knowing that, said, I don't have to hold this anymore. If it's true, it will return in truth. And the moment you embodied that, everything around you shifted. To him, at first, it felt like silence, like you vanished, like the pull he once took for granted suddenly disappeared. But then, something strange began to happen. Instead of you feeling farther away, he began to feel you stronger. That's the paradox of spiritual detachment. When you stop reaching for him energetically, your field becomes clear, pure, focused, and that clarity becomes irresistible. You stopped thinking about how to be enough. You stopped analyzing what went wrong. You stopped chasing closure. And in doing so, you created space, sacred space. And that space didn't push him away. It revealed the truth. You were never the chaser. You were the anchor. Now, your detachment isn't just something he notices. It's something he feels. Not in the way of rejection, but in the absence of noise. He no longer feels your energy trying to hold him. And that loss of energetic comfort becomes deafening. He walks through his day and feels your vibration missing from the background. He doesn't know why the silence feels heavier, why the world feels less alive, why he keeps looking for something he can't name. It's not you he's trying to find. It's the field you once created for him. The emotional safety, the unconditional love, the energetic space where he could rest, even when he didn't deserve it. But you withdrew, not in bitterness, but in sovereignty. And that sovereignty became magnetic. He doesn't know why he can't stop thinking about you again. Why your voice echoes of he at night. Why he dreams of moments he thought he forgot. Why he feels you everywhere, in music, in numbers, in strangers' faces. It's because your detachment created a vortex, one that doesn't pull from need, but radiates from alignment. And alignment doesn't beg. It commands attention. Do you realize what you've done? You became so whole that your absence started speaking louder than your presence ever could. You created such a strong field of self-love that only those in resonance can remain close. And he feels it more than ever. You're not clinging, you're not watching, you're not even waiting. And that is what draws him back, not because he's lonely, but because your field has become a mirror, one that reflects everything he's not, and everything he could be if he chose to rise. When you were available, he had space to avoid. When you stepped back, he had space to feel. Now, your detachment is not distance. It's invitation. An invitation to meet you where you truly are. Not in fantasy, not in half effort, but in frequency. And that frequency, beloved, is calling him. Not with force, with truth. Because the feminine doesn't magnetize by reaching. She magnetizes by being. And when she fully returns to herself, the masculine can no longer ignore the pull. Something sacred is happening, not just in your heart, but in the invisible layers of time. Timelines are collapsing, contracts are expiring, and the story you once cried over is no longer the same story unfolding now. You may not realize it yet, but the version of him that left is not the same version that is being called back. Because the agreements that kept you apart, the lessons that required pain, the patterns that demanded separation, they're dissolving. And when a divine feminine chooses herself, when she releases the karmic dance of waiting, chasing, and overgiving, a new reality begins to form. One where the masculine must face himself, not through punishment, but through truth. And that truth begins to strip away everything that isn't aligned with the union that's meant to rise. He may feel like life is spinning, like nothing makes sense, like things are falling apart for no reason. But there is a reason. The old contract, the one that allowed avoidance, ego, delay, is no longer valid because you've changed. And when you shift, the entire timeline shifts with you. The past agreement, where he could run and you would wait, where he could disappear and you'd still be open, where he could be unsure while you carried both ends of the thread, it no longer exists. Now, the universe is offering a new script, one based on mutual awakening, on balance, on soul responsibility. And that offer is shaking his foundation. He may not have the words for it, but his soul knows. He feels the pressure, the urgency, the subtle pull that says, "You're out of alignment now. Fix it." Not because you're pressuring him, but because his own higher self is done with the delay. The divine doesn't rush, but it doesn't stall either. And now that the window has opened, a portal of return, rebirth, and reckoning, he's being asked to make a choice, not between you and someone else, not between past and future, but between truth and illusion. That's what this collapse is all about. He's being confronted by everything he once used to avoid you. The logic, the fear, the stories that told him he wasn't ready, wasn't enough, wasn't meant for this kind of love. And those stories are unraveling. Because contracts built on fear cannot survive timelines built on truth. You've become a catalyst. Your growth rewrote the agreement. Your healing dissolved the patterns. Your silence signed the new contract, one where only aligned energy is allowed to stay. He's feeling the tension, not because you asked for anything, but because the path he's on no longer matches who he's becoming. And the version of him that's ready to meet you is starting to rise. But first, the old has to fall. the comfort zones, the distractions, the karmic placeholders, the roles he played to avoid his own reflection. They're crumbling, and in that collapse, your face returns, not as temptation, but as invitation. Because this isn't about romance, it's about soul return. It's about two beings who signed up to meet again when the timing aligned. And the timing is now. So if you feel sudden shifts, emotional waves, dreams of him, or even deep exhaustion, you're moving through the collapse too. You're clearing the final echoes of a story that no longer belongs in your frequency. Let it fall, because what rises next is not just him, but the version of the connection that was written in divine timing, not human fear. And that is what the soul has been waiting for all along. He didn't expect you to grow without him. He thought you'd stay in place, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, waiting for him to return when he was ready. But something happened that his ego never predicted. You evolved, and now the version of you he once knew no longer exists. Can you feel how far you've come? How your pain turned into wisdom? How your boundaries stopped being walls and became altars of self-respect? Can you feel how different your love is now? Not softer, not colder, but clearer. That clarity is what's shaking him, because the illusion he once used to avoid his own becoming, the one where he believed you needed him more than he needed you, is gone. You no longer radiate dependence. You no longer need closure to stand in peace. You no longer identify with the version of yourself who waited for someone else to awaken. And that, beloved, is the trigger. Not because you did anything to him, but because your energy now speaks a language his illusions can't understand. A language of truth, of maturity, of alignment. Have you noticed how old cycles no longer tempt you? How you've stopped explaining your worth? How you feel the shift in your own voice, your body, your presence? That's not just healing, it's transformation. And transformation is disruptive, especially for those who stayed in comfort while you were rebirthing in the dark. He sees you now, not the same way he did before. Now he sees a woman who no longer begs for being understood, a woman who understands herself so deeply that anything less than truth feels repulsive. And here's what that does. It has to him. It breaks every illusion he built to keep you small in his mind. It dissolves the stories he told himself to justify why he pulled away. It exposes the fact that it was never about you being too much, but him not being ready for something real. Have you felt that strange distance lately? Not emotional, but vibrational. Like he wants to come closer, but doesn't know how anymore. That's because you're no longer in the same timeline he left you in. You've ascended, and in doing so, you've forced him to look at the gap between who he pretended to be and who he now has to become to meet you. Does he feel you rising? Yes. Does it scare him? Yes. Is it inspiring him at the same time? Absolutely, because on a soul level, he knows. He knows that this growth isn't about moving away from him. It's about returning to yourself so completely that only what's real can remain. He didn't think you'd become this strong, this soft and powerful, this surrendered and unshakable. But you did, and that's why his old tactics no longer work. The charm, the silence, the mixed signals, they bounce off your frequency now because you've become clear. So if you're wondering why you've been on his mind, why he's watching you from afar, why you feel a mix of resistance and desire in his energy, it's because he sees you, but doesn't yet see himself clearly enough to stand beside you. And your growth is asking him, are you willing to rise, or will you continue hiding behind a version of love that no longer fits who you are becoming? So ask yourself, are you still carrying parts of yourself that were created just to hold him? Or have you finally created space to be held by truth? Can you love him without dimming your light? Can you keep rising even if he's not ready yet? Because here's what Spirit needs you to remember. Your growth is not punishment. It's preparation. It's purification. It's the soul's way of saying, I refuse to shrink for someone who was born to rise with me. And if he truly is your mirror, he'll feel that invitation. And one day, when the illusion finally collapses for good, he'll thank you for becoming the woman who never stopped evolving, even if he had to lose you just to find himself. He always felt your love, even when he denied it, even when he pushed it away, even when he convinced himself he didn't need it. But what he never expected to feel was your peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from getting what you want, but the kind that arrives after you finally release what was never yours to carry. The kind that radiates from a woman who chose herself, not because she stopped loving, but because she remembered who she was before she forgot. And now this peace is pulling him in. Have you felt it too? That quiet strength rising inside you. That stillness in your chest that says, I don't chase, I attract, and only what honors me can stay. That's not just healing, that's frequency. That's your field realigning to truth. And he feels it, not with logic, not with understanding, but with his nervous system, his dreams, his emotions that rise unexpectedly when he thinks of you. You're no longer vibrating in confusion. You're not waiting for him to figure it out. You're not looking over your shoulder, hoping he'll return with an apology. You've come home to yourself, and that, beloved, is the most magnetic thing a feminine can ever do. He feels it when your energy no longer leans forward. He notices when your social media radiates calm instead of craving. He senses the shift in the unseen space between you, not as rejection, but as sovereignty. And that shift terrifies him, because as long as you were reaching, he could delay. As long as you were available, he could hide behind indecision. As long as your love came with waiting, he didn't have to rise. But now, your peace has become a mirror, one that reflects everything he hasn't made peace with in himself. He wonders, how did she let go so gracefully? Why do I feel her more now than when she was trying to hold me? What does her stillness awaken in me that my mind can't explain? What if she's truly gone this time, not in body, but in spirit? These questions haunt him in the quiet, not because you're trying to hurt him, but because your peace has become louder than your presence ever was. You've stopped fighting for the connection, and that silence carries a wisdom that commands attention. He starts to remember how he felt when you were in his life, not just the passion, but the safety, the grounding, the invisible support your energy provided, even when you weren't speaking. Now that you've reclaimed it, he feels the absence of your peace more than the absence of your voice. And that's what calls him back. Because the truth is, men may not always understand energy with their minds, but their souls remember frequency. And your frequency has changed. You're not calling him back with desperation. You're calling him with divinity. And divinity doesn't plead. It vibrates. It anchors. It attracts. Can you feel how much more whole you've become? Can you feel how much lighter your heart is now that you stopped carrying what was never yours? Can you feel how your presence affects others differently? Not because you say more, but because you are more. This is what he feels now. Not your longing, but your liberation. And in that liberation, his soul starts to stir. It remembers the love you offered not as rescue, but as reflection. And now, if he wants to return, it won't be to the woman who waited. It will be to the woman who remembered, who rose, who no longer needs to be chosen because she already chose herself. And that choice is the pull, because what draws the divine masculine home isn't need, It's peace, and you, beloved, are radiating peace now. Letting go didn't mean you gave up. It didn't mean you stopped loving. It meant you finally understood the sacred difference between holding space and holding yourself hostage. You didn't let go to forget him. You let go to remember you, to breathe again, to stop bleeding energy into a future that wasn't being met halfway, to stop asking for signs that already lived inside your knowing. And even though it felt like a death at first, that release was your rebirth. But here's the mystery you weren't meant to fully understand. The moment you let go in truth, the truth began chasing him. Not because you wanted it to, not because you cast a spell or repeated affirmations, but because when a divine feminine truly surrenders, the mirror becomes undeniable. And that mirror, it travels, it reflects through silence. It echoes in places where your name is never spoken, but your presence is still felt. It speaks through songs, dreams, missed opportunities, and in the uncomfortable stillness where nothing else satisfies. Because no matter how far he runs, truth always knows the way back. Not just to you, but to himself. And you, beloved, you were always the reminder of what was real. He may have avoided it, denied it, tried to replace it. But truth doesn't compete, it waits. It weaves itself through time until the soul is finally quiet enough to hear. And now he's hearing it. Can you feel it? That tension in the field, that subtle sense that something is circling back, not in chaos, but in clarity. He's starting to realize you were never a chapter, you were the whole story. He didn't lose you, he postponed the version of himself that could meet you. The things he chased didn't fill the void. They just made him miss the late even more. What if everything he was running from was the only thing that ever made sense? Letting go didn't make you disappear. It made you untouchable to anything not built on truth. And now, truth is the only thing he can feel. This isn't about reunion timelines or spiritual predictions. It's about soul gravity. And the soul doesn't forget what touched it deeply. So if you've been wondering, did he ever really feel it? Yes. Does he still think about me? Yes. Will he return? Only if he allows truth to break through the noise. And that's not your job anymore. You were never meant to carry him there. You were meant to become the version of yourself who no longer needs the return, to know you were always the truth. And now that you are, his soul has no choice but to respond. Whether it takes weeks months, or lifetimes, the mirror is planted. The seed is alive. He may delay, but he can't unsee. He may run, but he can't outrun resonance. He may try to settle elsewhere, but his soul will know. You are the truth he turned away from, and the truth always returns, not because it's forced, but because it's fated. So rest now, not in hope, in knowing. You did your part, you remembered who you are, and the love that's real, it's already finding its way home.